Okay, fantastic. Well, good evening and hi, Sai. We're going to go ahead and start because we have a busy and exciting schedule this evening, and I want to make sure that all of our panelists get a chance to tell the audience about the great things that they're doing. My name is Kristen Luck, and I'm the librarian for the Okinawa Collection and Japan Resource Center at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. Before I introduce our speakers this evening, I want to turn it over to the director of the Okinawa Prefectural Government Office in DC, Mr. Kazuyuki, sorry, Kaz, Mr. Kazuyuki Nakazato for opening remarks. Director Nakazato, dozo.
Thank you. Hi, Sai. My name is Kazuyuki Nakazato, and I'm the director of Okinawa Prefecture DC Office. First and foremost, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Okinawa Collection at George Washington University for co-hosting today's webinar. In particular, I would like to thank Dr. Kristen Luck, who has dedicated tremendous efforts to organizing this event. Thank you very much, Kristen. Today's theme, doing research on Okinawa, brings together distinguished experts from across the United States who are at the forefront of Okinawa studies. Our colleague from the Okinawa Prefectural Library is also joining us for this session. I appreciate all the panelists for their kind participation. So Okinawa Prefecture DC Office was established in 2015, the same year as the Okinawa Collection. Since its founding, our office has been working to build networks with U.S. stakeholders and promote deeper understanding of Okinawa's long-standing base-related issues. In addition to disseminating the latest information from Okinawa and gathering relevant insights to provide feedback to the prefecture, we are also actively engaged in various exchange programs that showcase Okinawa's unique history, culture, and natural environment. In other words, its soft power. These efforts include promoting tourism and local products, cultural exchange initiatives, and fostering people-to-people connections. Furthermore, I believe many Uchinanchu, Okinawan descendants of Okinawan people across the United States and Canada, or maybe in other parts of the world participating in today's webinar. I would like to highlight that our office also plays a key role in strengthening the bond between Okinawan communities in North America and their home islands of Okinawa. Today's topic, Okinawa research, is very important. Even for those born and raised in Okinawa like myself, there is still so much we do not know about. The more we learn, the more we realize that there are even deeper layers to uncover. This ongoing discovery process only adds to Okinawa's remarkable depths and appeal. I look forward to hearing from each of today's panelists as we explore how Okinawa is being studied, the current landscape and challenges in the field, and how these discussions connect to us in the present day. I sincerely hope we all can learn and reflect together through today's session. The Okinawa Prefectural Government remains committed to collaborating with the Okinawa Collection, including through events like this webinar, and we look forward to continuing various initiatives in the future. Thank you again for your participation in today's webinar. With that, I would like to turn it over to our moderator, Kristen-san. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nakazato-san, for your remarks. So this evening, I'll be serving as the moderator for our discussion. And while I'm not presenting, it would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to talk about our Okinawa collection at George Washington University. As Nakazato-san stated, the collection was started in 2015, and we'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. So please keep an eye out for different digital exhibits and physical exhibits that we'll be offering and celebration events. We're funded by the Okinawa Prefectural Government, which we greatly appreciate because it gives us an opportunity to bring together scholars, students, and the community to learn more about Okinawa, engage with Okinawa, and do research on Okinawa. Most of our materials focus on post-war Japan and Okinawa as it relates to municipal histories, political science, policy, government, law, economics, public administration, security, and international affairs. And this is because we're located in our nation's capital. And many of our students here at GW study international affairs and go into associated careers. Um, however, having said that, Okinawa is more than just these topics in the military base issue. So we also collect materials on Okinawan literature, music, folklore, ehon, manga, art, textiles, and language. Our collection primarily collects monographs and printed materials, but we also have newspaper databases, music, ephemera, a photo collection, and a new oral history project that we just started. Um, I see a question that's already popped into chat. We also have an Okinawa sound archive. So it's not related to language, but it's an archive that has Okinawan sounds that people can research and listen to. Um, and although it's not a part of our collection at GW, we have the Textile Museum, which has Japanese textiles and Okinawan bingata, and that's open to the public. Our most popular, I'm sorry, so while the collection is funded by the Okinawa Prefectural government, it's also built with donations from scholars, the Okinawa Prefecture, and individuals who want to contribute to the collection as well. Um, our most popular topic and research guide is the military base issue guide by far. And our research guides, which are electronic guides on specified topics, they are open to the public. You can just go to our website and they're there. The most popular one is the military base issue, like I said, but it also covers things like gender and women, literature, music, environment, and we have new guides coming about Uchinanshu and other minority languages in Japan, as well as subnational diplomacy. Our materials are available for loan through the WRLC, the Washington Research Library Consortium, which is a 10-library consortium in the DC office. People from those universities can visit our collection and also borrow materials. You can also borrow our materials through ILL, Interlibrary Loan. So whether you go to your public library and request the material or your university library, it is available to you. Visitors are also welcome to the collection, and we want you to come. So whether you're a scholar or a student at another university or a member of the Okinawan community, this is your collection too, and we want you to come. I joke that our library, because we're a private university, is as secure as Fort Knox. It's hard to get into. You would need to contact me in advance to arrange for a visit, but please email me. I would love for you to stop by and visit our collection. Now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists because they are the highlight of our evening. First, I'm going to introduce our first presenter, who is a dear colleague of mine and a friend, Lynette Teruya. Lynette is the Okinawan Studies librarian at the University of Hawaii-Manoa Hamilton Library, and she's been in that role since 2023. Lynette and I both started in our respective roles at the same time. We also tend to show up at the same places. So if you see Lynette outside of Hawaii, I am probably somewhere nearby, and vice versa. Um, Prior to this, she spent 8 years as a librarian at Chaminade University of Honolulu. Lynette earned a master's degree in library and information sciences and in Asian studies with a Japan focus, mainly on Okinawa. Both of those are from the University of Hawaii-Manoa. She also spent a year at Ryukyu Daigaku, where she studied Ryukyuan history, literature, and culture, and is a former recipient of the Okinawa Prefectural Government Scholarship for Descendants of Okinawans Overseas. She also studied Uta Sanshin under Shihan, the late Katsumi Shinsato sensei. After Lynette, our next presenter will be Hana Omine, who was unable to join us in person today due to a scheduling conflict. However, we'll be playing her pre-recorded presentation, and she'll welcome questions that we can send to her. Hana Omine is the librarian of the Okinawa Prefectural Library since 2016. She works in the acquisition and cataloging section of the library and is in charge of the Okinawan materials. I think many people in our audience probably have questions for our next presenter, who will be Jacqueline Toma. Jackie is the president of the Okinawan Genealogical Society of Hawaii. She retired from Washington State, where she was a project housing manager, and she has a master's degree in social work administration. Our final presenter I think has one of the coolest jobs right up there with being a librarian. And that's Cameron Vanderscoff, who is an oral historian based in New York City and California. And he is with the Okinawa Memories Initiative through UC Santa Cruz. He's worked across 4 continents, creating family memoirs, multimedia public oral history projects, institutional community showcases, and more. He is a co-founder of the Okinawa Memories Initiative. And at UC Santa Cruz, which is a historical dialogue and education, which is the heart of his work. He holds a master's in his field from Columbia University, lectures at UC Santa Cruz, and is an experienced speaker and educator in his field at home and abroad. He's very accomplished. There's a little bit more. Cameron is the co-editor of Seeds of Something Different, a 2-volume oral history of UC Santa Cruz and experimentation in higher education, which was published in 2020. His works in progress include Street Sojourner, an oral history with the New York City homeless civil rights icon Jean Rice, and the untitled oral history of the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology. His interviewing work has been featured in Robert Rauschenberg, an oral history. And I'm sure I mispronounced a few things in there. My apologies. So I put our presenters in this particular order for a reason. Lynette, Hana, and I are librarians, and we maintain and preserve collections containing materials such as books, ephemera, music, and the like. We often work closely together at different times, and we also work with archivists to collect rare materials. And in our respective roles at the 3 institutions, again, we try to collaborate to provide access to different information. I positioned Jackie after Hana because Jackie's organization works closely with the Okinawa Prefectural Library to provide genealogical database information. She's going to tell you more about that relationship. And Cameron's position is unique as an oral historian because he's doing work that creates primary sources. So again, I'm eager to hear more about his work, projects, and processes. So I've done a lot of talking, and now I'm going to turn it over to Lynette, our first presenter. Lynette, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to share my screen now. Let's see. And can you see my screen? Okay. So aloha and hai tai. I'm Lynette Teruya, and I've been the Okinawa Studies librarian at the University of Hawai'i-Manoa since 2023. And I'm going to just briefly share some of the information about our Okinawan special collections, as well as share some of our current events going on at our library right now. In our library, the Okinawa-related collections include research materials in different formats. So we have print and digital electronic, AV resources, and microforms. And they're also in different languages. And it's so we have in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, English, and I'm sorry, I forgot to put on Ryukyuan on there too, and other Western languages. And our collections focus especially on the following disciplines. So multiple disciplines, humanities, social sciences, performing arts, and language, linguistics. And the Okinawan collection materials are dispersed throughout the library, and they're not located in one designated part of the library. So sometimes people are disappointed when they ask to see the Okinawan collections and cannot see them all in one place. So where are the Okinawan materials located in the Hamilton Library? The ones that are in green are open collections, and people can browse the shelves and retrieve materials themselves. And we have the East collection, which would be the materials that are written in Chinese, Japanese, or Korean. And our Asia collection, our Asia location, which is the materials that are written in Western languages. And we also have the microfilms that are open, so people can come and use the microfilms, retrieve the microfilm and use the microfilm readers in the microfilm room. And we have old newspapers, like going back to like pre-World War II and things like that. We also have the Asia Special Collections, and this is what I'm gonna be focusing on mainly. This is the Sakamaki Holly Collection, as well as collections, I should say, and the Hawaii Karate Museum Collection. We also have materials in the Hawaiian Pacific Collections. When we're talking about the Okinawans in Hawaii, that's in the Hawaiian Collection. We also have Okinawans in the Pacific Islands, that would be in the Pacific Collection. And we have plantation documents in the Hawaiian Pacific Collection as well that people use to do research about the immigration. We also have Okinawan materials in GovDocs. That would be the government documents, including the military documents and the UN. We have maps of Ryukyu and Okinawa in the map collection, as well as we have things in archives, and that would be things from like the Hawaii War Records Depository and the Japanese American Veterans collection as well. The Asia Special Collections, and like for those ones in the red, some of them require like a advance notice and appointments to access the materials, particularly the Sakamaki Holly and the Hawaii Karate Museum, because the use of the materials is monitored by a library staff. So staffing is required when someone requests access for these materials. And so the first collection that I'm going to talk about is collectively we call them the Sakamaki Holly collection, but they're actually two individual collections. And this is actually, when we talk about the Sakamaki Holly collections, it is the centerpiece of the Okinawan collections at the University of Hawaii. And it's the earliest acquired collection of Okinawa-related materials. The first part of that is the personal collection of Frank Hawley, who was a British journalist. He was a journalist for the London Times who lived in Japan for many years as an avid book collector. So the original Hawley collection was purchased in 1961 by the University of Hawaii after Frank Hawley passed away. And what is unusual about this collection is he went to Japan in about 1930, and he had started collecting materials, including things about Ryukyu. And when the war started, his collection was confiscated. So, you know, he spent a lot of time after that when he went back to Japan after the war ended, like trying to regather his materials that he had lost. And I think he gathered about 80% of his materials were retrieved. And in that collection, there were about 936 unique titles and over 2,000 physical pieces. And many of them were on Ryukyu and Okinawa. And because of the Battle of Okinawa, many of the materials in Okinawa they were destroyed. So what the Hawley collection has, some of them are the only existing copies because a lot of them had been destroyed during the war. The majority of the items in that collection are in Japanese, but there are also materials in various European, Chinese, and Ryukyuan languages. The formats, we have books, maps, scrolls, woodblock prints, handwritten manuscripts, Beingata notebooks, periodicals, and some are like Western or Japanese traditional binding. The materials some of them date back to the 1400s to the 1960s when, 1961 is when he passed away. So the way that it came to the university was a little interesting too. Shunzo Sakamaki, who was a history professor at UH, had been in Japan at the time in 1961 and had seen Hawley's obituary in the newspaper. And he was in Japan on his way to a conference. So he contacted one of his one of his colleagues in Japan to set up a meeting with the family of Frank Hawley. And so there was a lot of negotiation, and the university was very interested in getting this collection. But one of the conditions that the family had put on was that the collection had to remain intact. So when they purchased the collection, they couldn't like disperse it and, break up the collection. And the asking price for that was a little bit more than what the university could afford. So what Shunzo Sakamaki did was he went to the local Okinawa community in Hawaii and asked for donations to make up the difference. And so with the help of the local Okinawa community in Hawaii, the university was able to acquire the whole collection. And that's how it came to be at the University of Hawaii. But because it contains so many materials that you can't find anywhere else, we get a lot of international scholars and even like a lot of them from Okinawa wanting to use the materials. And, so they come by and they look at the materials. And this is a historical collection. So a lot of it has to do with Okinawa's or Ryukyu's past as well. So that's what they're looking at. And that's the Hawley collection. So let's see. This is what the Hawley collection, where it's stored. It's in a closed stacks, so it's under lock and key. And we have over 2,000 pieces of his materials. And this picture here is Frank Hawley in his study in Japan. And so to help with access, the University of the Ryukyu's Ryukyu Daigaku collaborated with the University of Hawaii to digitize part of the collection. So some of this is online, like the images are online. I think we have about 508 items that are up there right now. And this was done over 10 years ago. So if you go to this link that's up here, you could actually search for things so that you could see the images. And so this is one of the screenshots that I took from there. And so this is one of the scrolls that was restored at our university. Like we have it at our university. And this is from 1710. It was in poor condition. And so it was restored by the museum in Japan. And so we have that restored right now, and that's available. The images are available online. This is another digitized piece that we have, and this is about the customs of Okinawa. So you get to see what life was like in the 1800s. The other collection that is part of the Sakamaki Hawley collection is the Sakamaki collection. And this is Dr. Shunzo Sakamaki's personal collection. And, he also had collected things on Ryukyu because he wanted to establish a Ryukyu Institute, research institute. And so he had gathered a lot of things. And so when he passed away, his collection also came to the library. And I'm sorry, I'm running out of time, but this is what the Sakamaki collection looks like. And we have a third special collection, which is the Hawaii Karate Museum collection, which was donated in 2008 by a karate sensei here in Hawaii. And we have over 700 books and CDs, DVDs, videotapes. The majority of it is on martial arts, and it contains rare materials as well. It also has materials that are not related to karate, but on Okinawan culture and also about the Okinawans in Hawaii. And this is that collection. And so this is our general collection of Okinawa-related materials. This is the East collection that we have, and people come to use our library. Right now, we have 2 exhibits going on concurrently, and this is to commemorate the 125th anniversary of the Okinawans in Hawaii. The first one is Mireya Kugani. This is a display that was put together by the Hawai'i-United Okinawa Association, and the library is hosting this exhibit until May 19th. And in this exhibit, there's a timeline for the 125 years, along with colorful panels that tell the history of the Okinawans in Hawaii, as well as cultural explanations. And there's some artifacts, including remnants of the red tile that was sent from Okinawa to build the roof on the Hawaii Okinawa Center. So we have these panels. The second exhibit is about the Uchinanchu diaspora, from Okinawa to Hawaii and beyond, a worldwide Uchinanchu diaspora. This is a exhibit that I was involved with, that I gathered the materials and put this together. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back. And this is Hoyama Kyuzo. So the theme of this is that, the worldwide Uchinanchu diaspora, but Toyama Kyuzo had a saying when he was talking about, sending the Okinawans overseas. And he said, set forth, our home is the 5 continents. And so, from Okinawa, the first stop was Hawaii, as we can see. And from there, it expanded into other parts of the world. And on this display, we also explain why they went to other parts of the world, like the laws and things that had made it so that they were sent to South America. And so we have other statistics here of the pre-World War II immigration, post-World War II immigration, and the population of Okinawans around the world in 2016. That was the last data that I was able to find. And there was a section that I have on Toyama Kyuzo, like about his life, and there are pictures of his family and of his grave, which is in Hawaii. And we go to stories about the Uchinanchus in different parts of the world. So we have Pacific Islands, the Americas, North and South America, and Central America. And we have the Okinawans in Japan and other parts of the world, like even places like New Caledonia and Australia. And we have this display, this part is all about Hawaii. So we have one section on the materials that came out from the Hawaii-United Okinawa Association, including the first Okinawan festival. And we have a book from 1950 that has a lot of the Okinawan families in Hawaii. And that's also been digitized, so that's available online as well. And I'm gonna skip this, but the one thing that is important is that people are interested in Okinawa, and so these are the types of things that the research that people are doing. And for the faculty and students, it's a lot about language, performing arts, history, and of course, the political things like militarization, and also about diaspora topics. For visiting scholars, many come to get materials on the Okinawan community in Hawaii, as well, and also on the historical materials in the special collections. As far as the community interest, we get a lot of inquiries about genealogy and language. Some of the challenges for our collection would be funding, especially now, some of our federal funding got cut. And I actually have one of the smaller budgets, so it really is important for me to get, I get a lot of book donations, so I look at that and I receive those. And some of the challenges are also people ask for materials in English, but we don't always have, depending on the topic, we don't have materials in English. And if it is a translated material, we also have to be careful about telling people to be careful with the information, because some of it, you need to be critical of the accuracy and the authenticity of what was translated. And you also need to be conscious of the positionality when doing purchases, so that you can explain to people, what their viewpoints are, and also to get fair representation and to be aware of any controversies about a work that was pointed out by credible scholars. So just recently, there was controversy about a book that was about tattoos. So we need to be careful about that. And as far as opportunities, having the Okinawan collection and a separate position for Okinawan studies, it provides an opportunity to focus on Okinawa as its own area of studies and not as a subset of Japan. And we can provide balance by between internal and external voices or perspectives, meaning that we have viewpoints from the Okinawans themselves and how people from outside view Okinawan studies, and provide opportunity to look at Okinawa through various lenses, including exploring one of indigeneity. And we also have opportunities to collaborate with others. As far as the future plans for us, I'm gathering more shichosonshi, which is the histories of the city, towns, and villages, because they contain information about the cultures. And I also would like to collect more works by native Okinawan authors so that we have more voices from within, and build a stronger AV collection, including audio of people speaking language, identify materials in our collections for digitization projects. And we need to do more fundraising in order to do these digitization projects, and to look for projects which we can collaborate so that we can share in the cost. And my final thing on here is to continue to grow the Okinawan collections at the University of Hawai'i-Manoa. Thank you.
Lynette, thank you so much for your presentation. Your exhibits are exquisite. You set a very, very high bar. Let me have
Thank you.
to talk with you about
Sorry, I know
making.
I went over time. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. This was excellent information. So next, I'm just going to play Hana's presentation. Just as a reminder, Hana is the librarian for the Okinawa Prefectural Library. So I'm going to have to share my screen. I'm sorry, you're going to have to see some of my background things, but hopefully there's nothing that's too offensive back there. So bear with me one moment. Having an issue again. Hey, can everybody see my screen? Perfect.
Hello, my name is Hana Omine from Okinawa Prefectural Library. This is introduction for our library. I am librarian Okinawa Prefectural Library since 2016, and my main job in here is maintaining Okinawan materials. This is agenda of my presentation. First, I will briefly introduce our library and the notable collection. Then, I will talk about Okinawan Studies section, and in the end, I will introduce our online resources. Okinawa Prefectural Library opened in 1910. and collects materials and artifacts during Ryukyu Kingdom and modern Okinawa period. However, during Battle of Okinawa in 1945, all 30,000 titles of the library owned were destroyed by fire. The library established in 1947 under the United States military government of Ryukyu Islands administration. After a few relocations and renovations, the current Okinawa Prefectural Library opened in 2018 and the center of Naha City. Now we have 1 million books and play critical roles in supporting Okinawan and Ryukyu studies. Our first director was Fuyu Ihan, who is called as Father of Okinawan Studies. He collected materials and artifacts in Ryukyu Kingdom era to hand over the history and culture, while Japanization education was incorporated into Okinawa under the governance of the Empire of Japan. However, during World War II, Okinawa was the only battlefield in Japan, and unfortunately, 100,000 local people died, which was a quarter of the total population in Okinawa at that time. As well as 30,000 titles in the library were lost. Almost all documents in the island of Okinawa, included family registry and the land ownership papers owned by city halls, were burned out. After the war, OPL recollected Okinawan publications from libraries and archives in Tokyo, other cities, and even Taiwan that kept these materials over the war. Next, I will explain what surviving treasures from our collection. Since original collection of our library was destroyed in World War II, these collections are especially important to Okinawa studies. We currently hold 7 special collections. One of most important collection is the Higashonna Kanjun collection. Higashonna Kanjun collection was originally owned by Higashonna Kanjun, prominent Okinawan historian. He established the Higashonna Collection Foundation in 1963. After his passing, they were transferred to Central Library of Ryukyu government, after then Okinawan Prefectural Library. Collection included Ryukyu Kokunozu, a map of Ryukyu, made in mid-18th century. This is designed as a Japanese important cultural property. And there is a photograph copy of Rekidai Hoan, as well as some materials from Ryukyu Kingdom era to pre-war World War II. Also, collection included Higashonna's writing and the notes. This is Ryukyu Kokunozu. The villages called Magiri are divided in 6 colors with road in white and rivers in blue. In our digital archives, you can see some of those precious materials. Currently only available in Japanese, but you can download images and use them with notes. Now, our library has 1,962,000 books in total. A third of them are Okinawa materials. While our collection pre-war was destroyed, Okinawan publishing industry flourished after that. There are many local independent publishers, as well as many local communities published their own history books. Because of that, number of Okinawan books keeps growing. There is significant local history collections in our library. Historical books published by cities and regional hamlets in Okinawa are useful resource, while publications written in foreign countries are also important. Next, I will talk about Okinawa Prefectural Library's Okinawan Study Area and how to use them. Our library is located in Naha City, near bus and monorail station. Opening hour is 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., closed on Tuesday. We have 3 floors of the building. Each has themes. First floor is for children and educational use. Second is for general users. And the third is Okinawan studies. Third floor of our library dedicated Okinawan studies. We collected 3 books for a title. One goes to storage, and one goes to reference room, and the other for the rental. You can view the books from storage if you request it. Please note, some fragile materials are not available for viewing. We also have a copy of material like those, so you can look up them in the reference room. No reservation needed. Visit the reference room. However, if you plan to shoot video or photos for materials or facilities, you need application before your visit. Also, English-speaking staffs are not always present, so if you need assistance, please contact us in advance. Finally, I introduce our online resources. In 2022, our library and the Okinawa Genealogical Society of Hawaii and the Center of Okinawan Migration Studies created a database of Okinawan migration records between 1899 and 1944. It is open to public online and is able to retrieve with both Chinese character and alphabets from Japanese, English, Portuguese, and Spanish interface. We intended that overseas Okinawan people would access it anytime and the location when they get interested. Just filling immigrant's full name. You can see migration record of immigrant with destination, date of birth, migration dates, domicile address, and so on. Domicile address is supposed to be place the immigrant was born and raised before moving to foreign country. Again, we have our digital archives. Put the title or author and click search button. Then click brown button like this, so you can see the images. Check CC license and term of use when you wanted to use the images. Also, we have YouTube channel. We have videos for our library guidance or archives of our seminars. We have held multilingual simultaneous interpretation webinars in Japanese, English, Spanish, and Portuguese via Zoom and about Okinawan migration history and culture. In our YouTube channel, you can watch archives some of them. Those contents are available or linked from our website. Thank you for listening and appreciate comments and questions via email. Thank you.
Okay. So if she was here, I would tell Hana thank you for her presentation. And now we're going to go ahead and move forward with Jackie. So Jackie, go ahead and let's do your presentation.
Okay, so I put share. Do I put screen? Do I hit screen?
It should be at the bottom. There's a little green button that says share.
Oh,
Right.
yes, I hit it, and then it says screen, photos, iCloud. It's giving me a menu.
It should be screen.
Okay, thank you.
And Jackie, I also have your presentation if you're having difficulties, and I can.
Yes, it's like a spinning. So if you could do that, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just pardon me for just a moment while I.
It's not starting.
Yeah, I'm having technical difficulties too, but just one moment, and I think I'll have it.
Okay.
Okay. So, Jackie, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen,
Yes.
and then please just tell me when you want me to move the slide.
Okay, great. Thank you. You can, next slide. It just says Ukaji Deburu. We are here because of those before us, our ancestors, which is a Uchinaguchi Okinawan language phrase. Next slide, please. Okay, a purpose of Okinawa Genealogy Society of Hawaii is to promote, preserve, and perpetuate our Okinawan family heritage through education, research, and networking. And these are examples of the bookmarks that we make, which are Ryukyuing names. And it shows you the history of what they were in Ryukyu and then what they became after they were assimilated with Japan. Next slide. Okay, the education programs, we have monthly meetings with guest speakers, and they talk about genealogy research, Okinawan history and culture. We've gone on field trips. We've gone to the Family Search Center, which is run by the Latter-day Saints. And we also have gone to the University of Hawaii Hamilton Library to see the Okinawan Collection with Lynette Teruya. And last year we did an educational workshop, which was looking at Okinawan ancestry through DNA. Next slide. Okay, publications. The first book is called The Guidebook to Okinawan Genealogy. It has online steps needed to begin your research journey. That was the first book that we published back in 2012. And then we came up with a second book just recently, last year. It's called Genealogy Connections. And this came about because a lot of people, when they would go meet our researchers, they asked them a lot of questions about, yagos, about places, about the changes in the names, but they also included history and culture in the book. And then, as I said, the last one is the Ryukyuan name bookmarks. And this is very, very popular. We sell this at our Okinawan festival, and a lot of people buy it, to give as gifts for their family. Okay, next slide. Okay, research. We have a group of research volunteers who meet at our facility every Friday. and they address requests for genealogical research for individuals seeking information on their Issei, which is the first generation ancestors who immigrated to Hawaii. And individuals can also ask us about information about ancestors or relatives living in Okinawa. The committee responds to requests, and in 2024, our research volunteers assisted with 111 requests. 47 of these were at the annual Okinawan Festival. And in the picture, you can see one of our volunteers, Claire Sue, who is looking at her computer and working with a couple. We created a database of the immigrants who came to Hawaii from 1900 to 1925. And we also closely work with the Okinawan Prefectural Library with their database. Their data source is 60,000 immigrants who went worldwide, and it's available in 4 languages, as was presented before. Next slide. Yeah, so the Okinawan Festival, we participate and is sponsored by the Hawaii-United Okinawan Association. The research committee provides genealogical research services, and educational displays may include family registry and genealogical research processes using database, Ryukyuan names, and DNA information. What you see on the side was our display last year where we talked about different artifacts, and one is kafu. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with kafu. It's very different from a koseki. Kafu was instituted in Okinawa by the Okinawan government. And it's more than just a delineation of the name of your name. It has your family name, and it also lists important events that happen. Like it includes like your coming for the males, your coming of age, when you got married, and it lists all your different children as well as your positions. And we also do displays around the community to talk about Okinawa Genealogy Society. Next slide. And thank you, Ipe Nife Dibiru. For additional information, we have a website, ogsh.org. Our email address is ogshnews@gmail.com. And that's it.
Jackie, thank you so much. And I know that there were a lot of questions that were of the presentation, so we'll move into those in the Q&A and address those. I'm going to try to balance those questions with some of the more academic questions. But before we do that, we're going to do our final presentation, and that's going to go for Cameron. So Cameron, go ahead. I think you may be on mute still.
I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Right. Good. Is that coming through?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm just going to start the slide sequence. Let's see. Okay. That is the. All right. So, okay. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. Okay, can you all see that?
No, just you.
Just me. Well, all right, hold on. Let me try this one last time. If not, I'll just proceed without it. Okay. All right. And now.
We can see it.
Excellent. Okay, great. Wonderful. So thank you everyone for your patience today. I'm Cameron Vanderscoff. I am the oral historian and co-founder of the Okinawa Memories Initiative. Hi, Sai, and greetings to everyone. I'd also like to give an acknowledgement to, I believe our director, Alan Christie, is in the audience, and I see some of our undergraduate students are also in the audience who are really the backbone of our projects. So big thanks to them. I just want to start off with this image, which is our logo. People think it's a basket or a net, and that's perfectly fine. But it's actually a rendering of the sotetsu, the cycad, sago poem. And we use this as our logo because in an oral history with an elder from Ogimi, I believe it was, we asked this elder, what would she want to pass on to the younger generations? And she said the knowledge of how to make food from the otherwise poisonous sotetsu during times of famine. In other words, she was passing on this sort of key for survival, right? And so I think that's a powerful symbol of the potency of memory across generation and of the message of elders. And so that is our insignia, and try to think back on it from time to time. So this little slogan is a slogan we've worked with over the years: the world in an island, and an island in the world. You know, a lot of the studies around Okinawa, actually, to go back to what some of my esteemed colleagues here said, sometimes Okinawa is studied as a subset of Japanese studies or a subset of East Asian studies and things like that. And folks do good work in those veins. We try to think of Okinawa not as a periphery or someplace that's on the edge of the world about to fall off or something, but instead as a center of the world, a hub of the world, right? And one that has been a hub for centuries and centuries, right? Going back to the first and second Sho dynasties and the kingdom era. But we also try to keep track of an island in the world because, of course, as again, some of my predecessors were alluding to, Toma-san in particular, the story of the diaspora is critical, right? So those are some basic things about OMI, a little OMI 101, Okinawa Memories Initiative. We've been around about 10 years, so we're just about siblings with you over there at George Washington. We're based at the University of California, Santa Cruz, which is a little south of San Francisco, for anyone who's not familiar. We've worked with different institutions over the years, including University of the Ryukyus on island, and then several places in the California State University system, like Monterey Bay and East Bay. And we're always a mix. We have undergraduate students, graduate students, staff, faculty, alumni, and that's just speaking within the university. Our values are experiential learning, which is the idea that a big part of what we do is educating undergraduates, young people about Okinawa and encouraging them in their own journeys as thinkers and as scholars and as the next generation of leadership to have some awareness of this precious place and what it has to teach the world. And you learn that by doing. You learn that by doing, right? So, and then community service, to serve the community is something we're always thinking. We have several different teams, and today I'll be talking primarily about the oral history team, right? But we do also have an archives team. Right now they're doing work with the Okinawa Association of America in Gardena, California, digitizing segments of their archives. And so that's an ongoing process. And on the weekend, you can find a group of students spending their weekend afternoon scanning photos from different gatherings and events at the OAA over the years. We also have an exhibits team. We've put on shows before around, just most recently around Ryukyuan cooking, cuisine. We had a wonderful chef come over from Okinawa. We have a communications team and a media production team. And we also have some classes. my colleagues, Alan Christie and Alexis McClellan Ufugusku, and also Drew Richardson, have been involved in teaching history and memory in the Okinawan Islands. This is a UC, the whole University of California system-wide online class, and it's like a crash course in the history of Okinawa. And so this is also a part of what we're doing. And then I teach an oral history course, 1 quarter at Santa Cruz. So I won't go too much into this. These are just some of our various trips that we've made to Okinawa over the years. We work year round here. I'm in New York part of the year, and I do some work from there. But most recently, again, we got in touch with the OAA, and we asked them, what would be a meaningful way to support them, right? And they said, well, we want to make sure that our historical records are safe, right? And we've just heard how important that is, right, in Okinawan history, how precious that is. And so anyway, that's where the digitization of the archive began. We're having a trip to Okinawa coming up this next summer. I won't be on it, but many other people will be. And that's going to be coming up in just a few months. We usually do the trips to coincide with Ire no Hi, right? The day to console the dead or remember the dead from the Battle of Okinawa, the Memorial Day there. So, getting on to oral history. How am I doing on time, Kristen? I don't want to.
You're doing okay right now. I'll send you a little
Yes,
reminder if you're running over.
just ping me. Yeah, okay. So, all right. So, oral history. What do we do? So, there's an undergraduate student lead of our oral history team who really does the bulk of the work on the year-round basis. I'm like the professional advisor. And in OMI, we use the life history method in our interviews, right? So we're always trying to explore someone's experience broadly with open-ended questions and follow-up questions. It's not a questionnaire. This is a critical thing about oral history. Instead, it's almost like a live performance a little bit. And so that way, when you're speaking with somebody, because sometimes when you're speaking with someone, they'll have their own set of things that they want to talk about that sometimes are better than what you had prepared yourself for with the research, right? And you know that you can't sit there with an elder and say that we're not going to go into that. No way. We're going into it, And so we have an open-ended approach. I can talk about the legalities of that. We select narrators or interviewees. The criteria is that you need to have some sort of a connection to the Ryukyus. It's a broad net that we're actually casting there. So the collection is certainly far-reaching. We do this with usually broadcast quality audio. We clip a little microphone on someone's lapel. Typically, we do video as well. So this is just a map of some of the places where we've either done oral histories or done sort of oral history related activity or laid some sort of foundation to do oral history. So you can see a bit of a spread on both sides of the Pacific and even a bit of the Atlantic. And then I hope very much in future for us to be able to get back down to Bolivia, Brazil, to the Colonia Okinawa down there and all of that. So what is our collection? We have about 77 sessions, give or take. They are, the most common language is English, followed by Japanese, and then with some limited instances of Uchi-Naguchi or Spanish. I provided a list of different narrators we've had in our collection. So you see it's very broad, right? It's from people who survived World War II. But we're looking at questions of intergenerational transmission and knowledge making, right? And so we've also interviewed plenty of U.S. military veterans. The first U.S. military veteran I ever interviewed about Okinawa is my grandfather, who was at the Battle of Okinawa in 1945 with the Navy, and he's 103, and he's still with us. And so I ask him about that time sometimes. And so we try to think about oral history as historical dialogue, right? We're coming from the United States, so we're going to have a different approach. But one of my convictions throughout this work has been, you know, in Okinawa, everyone's aware of the United States. It is an unavoidable reality through the base issue, through the various cultural impacts since 1945. But of course, we know that in the United States, the opposite is not true, right? The awareness of Okinawa and the impact of U.S. actions or policies or choices or culture or any of these things, that's not there. And so, you know, we work on that side of the line. So with the idea that everyday people can play a role in historical dialogue and building understanding, right, of this island, this hub in the world. And one of the inspirations for our oral history process, at least for me personally, was the cornerstone of peace. You know, the cornerstone of peace in Itoman in Okinawa, Heiwa no Ishiji, and the you know, I'm a historian. A lot of our leadership, Dr. Christie, Dustin Wright, a lot of our folks are historians, and we're interested in memorials. You know, we're very compelled. And this was the first memorial that I'd been to that inscribed names from such a wide range of sides on the conflict, right? That you have Okinawan names, you have Japanese mainland names, you have American names, British names, Korean, and right, there's something in this notion that everyone would come to one place to remember this terrible calamity and hopefully have some kind of a connection around it. And I had the privilege of meeting Governor Ota before he passed away, who, for anyone who doesn't know, was a key figure in getting this thing created and was a survivor of the battle. And that's how we talked about it as. And with our collection, I hope that the collection can provide in some way its own point of meeting of different languages, of different points of view, thinking about that inspiration from the cornerstone and from the many deep practices of Okinawan memory, you know. Because I mean, Okinawa is a wonderful place to practice oral history because it's a place where oral history for most people throughout the history was the history, unless you were, you know, affiliated with the royal court, right? I mean, you know, oral history was the history, and it's amazing the things that you can learn. There's a notion that oral history is quite inaccurate or things like that, and we always push back and say, well, no more or less than the documentary history, you know. And it has its distinct values. So our collection right now is still private. One is that we work closely with when we interview someone, we share copyright with that person. Okay, so because we don't want to replicate a dynamic where somebody goes into a community, especially I'm not, you know, from the Okinawan community myself, going in there and then taking the rights to something or extracting something away from the community. So one of our goals this summer is actually to return some of the interviews to some of the people who've shared them with us and to get their approval. The idea is to publish the first round of release, like the first batch of oral histories coming up in the next year here. Fingers crossed. We would publish these on our websites and on linked platforms, you know, like we're still figuring out exactly how we'd host like video footage, for instance, right? That's sort of that's a question for sort of the media team or the technical team. We would like that to be open access, right? And we hope that these materials, these oral histories, like when we have exhibits, they're open to the public generally. We've had exhibits at many community centers, Kominkan and Okinawa, and then also here in California. And so we hope that these are used broadly by not just academics, but by members of the community for whatever might be of interest to them. And I'll just wind down by saying, in an ideal situation, we would translate all the materials mutually, at least English and Japanese. I would love to see if we could work with some of the Ryukyu languages movement, to build up our collection of memory of the Ryukyu Islands with Shimakutuba, with the island languages. Um, Funding is always a challenge for us. We're a public university, and it's a difficult climate right now. And getting funding for the humanities is always a little tricky. We're next to Silicon Valley, so everyone is very into coding and all of that. And we're like, well, this is important too. So we're looking at opening up a chapter at the University of the Ryukyus. They've expressed an interest in doing that, which would be really exciting. Collaborating with more places like the OAA. And then I'll just say we love hearing from interested community members. We're still working on processing and publication. It's an ongoing challenge, getting some of the funds together to do that stuff. And please stay in touch with us. Please write omi@ucsc.edu. I don't know, we could share that in an email maybe after the talk, to connect, to join our mailing list, or just to get in touch. We love to hear from people, So anyway, thank you very much for your time, everybody. Nihei debiru, and I'll pass it back to Kristen.
Thank you, Cameron. I've learned a lot, and I probably will touch base with you a little bit later at a different time. But we have about 15 minutes to do Q&A. And we might run a little bit over if that's okay with our panelists. And of course, people are free to come and go. I will say that if I don't answer a question that you submitted, I will try to reach out to you in the next week to answer your question. I'll email you if I can put the question and the person together. A couple of questions, maybe I don't have an answer to, like, will Okinawa become its own country? I don't have an answer for that, but there are a few questions like that. So I'm sorry, it might be outside of the scope of my expertise or my vision. But let me start with some of the academic questions, and then we'll move over to the genealogy questions, because Jackie's prepared some tips on how you can do genealogy research. And some of these I might just answer quickly, and if anybody wants to like tack on an answer, they feel free to do so. Um, we got a couple questions about um, since the Okinawan community is transactional, how do we bridge disparities between the global north and the global south when researching Okinawa? How do we also bridge disparities between the US and Okinawa? And how do researchers who do not have a Uchinanchu background, how should they engage with research that touches on Okinawa, its culture, current of issues, and transnational community? So I think just to briefly tackle that last question, positionality is key when you're doing research as an academic, whether you're undergraduate, graduate, or you have your PhD and you're in the faculty. You have to acknowledge your positionality when approaching Okinawan topics. I find the research is very community-based research, and you need to find a way to level out that playing field. I am curious what Lynette and Cameron and maybe Jackie have to say about that. And then as far as the disparities between the global north and the global south, when doing research in Okinawa, I feel like our panelists might have some better answers than I do, but I think that's one thing that I know our collection is trying to do, is to bring more resources from the global south into our collection, and scholars and their work, and bringing that there. There's also a new initiative through the Yanai initiative at UCLA and Waseda University called Japan Past and Present. And they're trying to collect different resources, Global Scholars Directory, where you can connect with different scholars. We're trying to do a library services initiative, where we're trying to be able to send materials to other countries that may not be able to access Japan. And I am going to lump Okinawa in this context within Japan studies, and not something separate, but that would be included in that. So those are two initiatives that just off the top of my head I'm familiar with, but would our panelists like to chime in on that question? Jackie, Cameron, anything?
Mm.
I mean, I can speak briefly. I mean, just that as a person of non-Okinawan background to do this work, I mean, just it's critical that you come in with humility. You know, I always say that in oral history, you know, we only ask sincere questions. In other words, we don't ask sarcastic questions or rhetorical questions. We only want questions to which we want an answer. And so, therefore, that means that in some sense we're ignorant, and that ignorance has to be a basis of ethics and respect. And I don't know if I always personally live up to that. Sometimes, you know, I mean, I think there needs to be self-critique. I think there needs to be self-awareness, and that there's a long history of people sort of taking what they want. There's just an allusion to the recent issue with the publication on Hajiji, you know, and I mean, that these are sensitive things. That's also related to the reason why we've been slow to publish in some ways. And so it's just a question of who's the expert. And as an oral historian, I don't really think that I'm the expert. It's the person, usually an elder, who to whom I'm speaking or to whom a member of the team is. But I will say that the wider OMI team, we have people from a wide range of backgrounds, including Uchi Nanshu or other Ryukyu descent. So then their positionality would be very, very different, right? There's people there, you know, we've had people be the first one in their family return to Okinawan generations to be able to visit a family tomb and these kind of things, right? So it depends. We're a public university, so it's this mix. But I don't claim to be an expert on this thing. I think, you know, but I hope that we can move with humility and with care and with respect.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what you were saying, Cameron, I'm a social scientist, so when I do international field work, um, I'm always honored that people actually want to speak to me and tell me their stories and share their data with me. And they're not subjects. We're doing this research together, and it's not their job to teach me. It's my job to properly collect their stories or their information, and to analyze it and to disseminate it in a very responsible way. So that again, recognizing that positionality. And so I feel very similarly, even though I do social science research and you're doing oral histories, I think our approaches are very, very similar. We have a great responsibility with how we handle that data or their stories. Let me move on to another question, and then we'll switch over to genealogy. Let's see. Somebody has a question about language models and AI with Ryukyuan languages. I will email you because I think that's a fascinating question, but I don't have an answer on that. There were a lot of questions about what role do you think learning Uchinaguchi has in preserving and understanding history? What are your experiences? What are the best resources for learning or researching Uchinaguchi? There is also a question about should there's a question about should you learn Uchinaguchi, or what is your responsibility for learning Uchinaguchi when you're doing research? So does anybody want to tackle any of those questions?
I'll answer the one about Uchinaguchi. You know, I strongly believe that it's really important, and that because language, you know, represents the values and beliefs of a culture, and it also preserves the cultural history. And we have a saying here, and I think it comes from the whole Hawaiian movement, because Hawaii and Okinawa are very similar in that they had, you know, a kingdom, and then they had people come in and then tell them that they couldn't speak their language, they couldn't practice their cultural practices. And this is a quote that I got from someone. It says, if you forget your language, you forget your nation. If you forget your nation, you forget your ancestors. And to me, that's really powerful, because if you don't know the language, then you cannot connect to the original people of where you come from.
And what would you say about scholars doing research in Japanese or in Uchinaguchi? Do you think um, Lynette and I were actually having an interesting conversation about this at AAS. Like, what responsibility do scholars have when using interpreters or using primary sources or learning a language? What would you say about that? Maybe somebody who doesn't have that connection. Lynette, if you have any thoughts too.
Oh, um, yeah, I guess like what we're talking about, like if you're learning the language and you need help with something and you depend on somebody, but you also have to trust the person, right? And you trust the person, but you need to know whether that person is um capable, I guess, for want of a better word, of giving you the closest meaning to whatever it is that someone is saying. And I think too, it is that whole thing about positionality too, to know where someone is coming from and to also to I think it's also humility to some degree, like to have humility. And if you're not sure, then say you're not sure, because sometimes something might be misinterpreted and then you create like misunderstandings in that sense. So I think it's a combination of different things, understanding where people come from and what their purpose is for asking something or doing something.
Mhm. I always say that regardless of your language ability, that language barriers shouldn't prevent you from doing research that you want to do.
Mhm.
But you do have a responsibility to learn as much of the language as you can. And I say this because not everybody has the same access to learning a language, but you have a responsibility to learn as much as you can. And if you use interpreters or translators, you have to explain that within your work. What did you do and why did you do it? And you need to be responsible about that, just like you were saying, Lynette, making sure interpretations and language and translations are accurate. Um, I have a few more questions. This is a question for all speakers. Lynette touched on this, but how do you view your collection's activities in relations to Japanese materials and activities? What difference does it make when people see Okinawan Ryukyuan collections activities as a subset of Japanese ones or not? I will just say I have a combined position. So I'm an Okinawan studies and a Japanese studies librarian. So I manage both collections. They both have different funds, so different funding buckets. Um, Okinawa is a prefecture of Japan. So in that respect, that's accurate to view it that way. But to me, I do see them as two distinct roles and two distinct collections. So they are interrelated because it is a prefecture. The materials are in Japanese in my collection. But I do see Okinawan studies as actually being separate from Japanese studies because it is unique and it has its own culture and history and language and so on. I know Lynette had a slide devoted to this, and she also has her own thoughts about why there's a need for Okinawan studies librarians and her role at Hawaii. Lynette, did you want to continue along that line?
Okay, sure. So I guess for one thing, it is like a lot of the materials are in Japanese. And what I'm trying to get in the future is to get more native Okinawan authors uh, to hear that voice also, because a lot of times things are written in Japanese and we get our information, um, and they're scholars. So people do research and things, but they're not necessarily native Okinawan people that will tell a certain narrative, I guess. So I feel like I'm trying to get a balance of the narratives between the things that are coming from outside, looking in on what Okinawan culture is or Okinawan um, lifestyle is like and everything like that. It's an observation. Like, from the outside, it's an observation. But if it's somebody that's inside, that's telling their story as a narrative of the things that they experienced, then, there's I guess I'm trying to get more a balance of that, because I get a lot of things that are books about Okinawan culture and things, but they're not necessarily from the people who are Okinawan inside. And when I say Okinawan, I'm not talking about the diaspora. I'm talking about the people that live in Okinawa. And so that thing about positionality again, myself included, I don't live in Okinawa. I was born and raised in Hawaii. And so, my experience as an Okinawan outside of Okinawa is going to be different from an Okinawan who's in Okinawa. So I don't want to tell them what I think, like how Okinawa should be, or how, something like that. I want them to say for themselves what they think Okinawan culture is, or how they view themselves, so that we get that voice as well. And part of that is I have to listen. I need to listen rather than say something.
One more question on the academic side, then we'll switch over. And I'll kind of take the lead on answering just so we can, for the sake of time. As graduate students, when we approach librarians about requesting access to certain archives, how much advanced preparation do students need to have? Do they need to have perused the collection records already to know exactly what titles we want to access? Or is it appropriate to ask a librarian whether the collection might have materials related to our narrow topics? I'm going to answer this. I think if you're going to an archive, you're using primary source materials, you should peruse ahead of time to know what you need. But an archivist can also help you identify what they have in the collection, what would be available to you. So email them or call and set up an appointment with them to access those materials. Librarians, Lynette might approach this a little bit differently from me, but I just say email me your question. The more specificity you have, the better. So if you have research questions or keywords that you've already used, sometimes if you have a working bibliography, that way I'm not duplicating. I usually meet with students for about 30 to 60 minutes by Zoom or in person. I do drop in appointments, but my schedule's a little bit here and there because I do a lot of different things. I know, Lynette, I think you have a window that you ask the people to make appointments. But any stage where you are in your research, I think it's okay to approach a librarian. We love meeting people and helping you. So anytime, just anywhere you are in your research, and you can meet with us multiple times. We will not do your work for you when we can't translate, but we love to meet with you to do your to help you do your research. So come where you are. Let's switch over to Jackie. A lot of questions about genealogy. I know we're running out of time, but you have this beautiful document that you created about getting started with genealogy research in Hawaii. Do you briefly just want to go over this document, or
yeah. Can we share it on the screen?
Yeah, just give me a moment to pull it up. And I know we're running over, folks, but if you have some time to stay, I think this was a really brilliant document that she came up with. Bear with me just a moment.
Yeah, and it was because a lot of the questions were about how do you get started, about the different resources, how do I contact my family in Okinawa. And so I took this from that guidebook that we have. It's a very brief summary, and as I go through it, I'll explain that there's also complications in doing Okinawan genealogy. I don't know if people can see it, but the first one is, yes, start with your family. Ask questions. Ask them about your family. If they have any stories. Oops, can you enlarge it a little bit?
Trying to figure out how to do that in Google Docs.
Oh, okay. I'll go on.
Sorry. Oh, I think I figured it out.
Yeah. But what's really important when you get started is you need the first and last name of the issei. If you have the kanji reading, if available, that's really helpful, and the birth date, and what village that they came from. And the reason we need all this information is because a lot of Okinawan names a lot of people had the same first names and the same last names. And so unless you know their actual birth date or which island they went to, you might be looking at the wrong person that you're trying to find, you know. And another problem is that the kanji readings are different for Japanese and for Okinawan. A lot of Okinawans, when they came to Hawaii, they had Japanese, people, Japanese-speaking people, registering them. And so they read them the Japanese way. And so as we found out recently, like one of our members went to Okinawa and his name is Kaneshiro. He could not find any Kaneshiros in Okinawa because they're all Kinjos, and that's the issue because it's the same kanji, but written differently. And he was saying that if he went there looking for it, he would never have found anyone. And as I said, the birth date is really important because there's an example like Kame can be used both as a male and a female name. And so those are things that get confusing. And part of your family records that you should be collecting is if you have any passports, family registry, and that's if you have a koseki or if you can get a hold of one, or a kafu. And as I said before, that's an official Okinawan document. If you have any immigration cards, birth, death, marriage certificates, family cemetery records, what I found very useful are headstones. My grandparents are buried at Oahu Cemetery, which have those, large headstones that stand upright, but they have the kanji on the front. Then they have all the names of the people and their birth dates, And what I just recently discovered is on the side of the headstone, it says the village of where they came from, Another thing is people have, family butsudon, those little those Buddhist altars. Or you may have a totome, which is a memorial tablet to someone who's passed away. There's also church records like baptismal. And in Buddhist, there's something called kakocho, which is a death record. And it's also important if you have any photos, journals, wills, anything from the Issei is very important. The resources in Hawaii, fortunately, we have a lot of clubs that are affiliated based on the village that you came from. And a lot of the Issei belong to these clubs. And there's also the Hawaii Okinawan Center has its own library. And they have a lot of information. But when you go to the Okinawan Genealogical Society, we have a reference library with Japanese and English materials on the Okinawan clubs. We also, as I talked to you before, is we have volunteers who can guide you through the research. We have our own immigration database with records from Okinawa of Okinawans who immigrated to Hawaii. And this came from the prefectural government. And so we have information on Isseis from 1900 to 1925. And they meet every Friday at the Hawaii Okinawan Center from 9 to 2. And we recommend that people make appointments, but they are also willing to do via email. So they have helped people in the mainland and outer islands. Then this is just really quickly other resources. There's the US Census, there's health records, there's ancestry.com, Densho, which does Japanese internment and also like kind of oral histories of World War II veterans. There's Find a Grave, Family Search, which maybe a lot of people have used. It's a free versus Ancestry kind of what do you call it? Ancestry organization. There's Social Security. The Japanese Cultural Center of Hawaii also has a research center. And then the Japanese consulate is important because you can get, that's where you would go if you need to get a koseki. You have to go to them, and in our, our guidebook, we don't go through the steps of what you need, kind of documents. And the important thing is that you have to show your descendancy from the Issei. So you have to have, you don't have their birth certificate, but if you have your parents' birth certificate that shows their name, the Issei's name, and then you show that you're the child of that person, and you could delineate your, ancestry, then they'll be willing to help you. And they're not willing because there's a lot of privacy issues, from Japan, that they're not willing to, release those kind of information. There's also the National Archives database, which has a lot of information about World War II. And someone had a question about POW information, and I looked it up. I spelled that wrong, but I noticed that the International Red Cross does work a lot with POWs, but I also found out that it depends on what part of the world you are living at for POWs. Because I just recently found out that if you were living in the Pacific, you got sent as a POW to Australia, and Australia does have records of their POWs who went there. The next one is resources in Okinawa. If you are able to find your family in Okinawa, there's the family city halls, the village, city halls. And like we said before, when you do your research, if you go through like the databases, they will give you not only the Issei name, the village that they came from, but their last known address. What you have to do, though, is go to the city hall, because a lot of those addresses no longer exist, because of the war and because of, just modernization. A lot of those houses don't belong there anymore. And if you want to find them, you would have to go to City Hall to find the real maps. And the Okinawa Prefecture Archives, the Okinawa Prefecture Peace Museum has a listing of all the people who were killed during the World War II. Then there's something else very, very important, which is called Okinawan kominkans, which are the community centers. And this is a wealth of information, because if you can go to the village kominkan, there's usually a head person of that, and they may know of your ancestor or know of someone who knew. And that's how a lot of the people that we've helped find their relatives, is that they've gone to City Hall, and then they've gone to the community center. And by chance, they talked to the people there and they said, oh, I know so-and-so. And then they were able to find their relatives. And the Okinawa Prefectural Library has this immigration database that I forgot it, Omine-san had talked about. And then the other thing is just, about how do you do your log, keep a log of everything, do a family tree. And then I have here the OGS assistants, and their email is ogsh.rteam@gmail.com. When you contact them, they will send you a form that you need to fill out in order for them to be able to help you. Secondly, I wanted to talk about finding relatives in Okinawa. You have to first start with the immigration records, because you need to find out where the person lived. And as I talked about, you need to go to City Hall, and then hopefully you can go to the kominkan or the place where they live, because sometimes, even though your ancestor may not live there anymore, the neighbors might still know of your family member. And the one note I wanted to make is that City Hall and kominkan volunteers do not generally speak English. You'll need to hire a certified tour guide or work with an organization. There's the Worldwide Uchinanchu Youth Association's Root Project, and I have their website there, that they are willing to help you find and contact your relatives. And this is all fee-based. Okay, that's it. A lot of information.
We're now at time, and we've actually gone over, so I appreciate our panelists for agreeing to stay a few minutes longer, as well as our attendees. There's been a few questions about, can you get a recording of the webinar tonight? The answer is yes. It'll be on the Okinawa Prefectural Government DC Office's page shortly. You can also email me. I'm happy to send it to you. So just reply to the email that Santiago Ravello and I sent to you with the link for this. Also, some people were asking about, can we compile a list of contact information for our panelists, or the slide decks? So I'm going to try to find a concise way to disseminate that, whether it's going to be on OPG's website or maybe ours. We'll figure it out. But feel free to, again, reply to Santiago's email, and we'll try to get you hooked up with whatever you would like. Speaking of which, if you had a question that you submitted and we didn't answer it in some way, again, I will try to email you personally in the next week. Just give me a little bit of time because there were a lot of questions. And if you don't hear from me and there's something you're dying to know, again, email me. Happy to respond to you. But I want to thank Lynette, Hana, Jackie, and Cameron for being so generous with their time. And again, a copy of the recording will be available. And we appreciate you attending our webinar. If you have suggestions for future webinars, we would love to hear it. It also makes me wonder if we need to do a part 2 of this webinar in the upcoming year or focus on something in particular and expand on it. I'm a qualitative methodologist and a social scientist, so this is like my jam. I could continue all night, but we're going to stop here. I'm going to stop recording